One of the big changes that Darren and I made on our farm back quite a few years ago is we took a bunch of acres we had been no-tilling and converted that over to strip till. So today we wanted to discuss just a little bit about strip till, the things that we like, the things we don't like, and the steps we're taking to make sure that strip till works as good as it can in our operation.
All right, now obviously we're in the early spring, Brad, but there's always this question, what do you think about spring versus fall? You know, can I do it in the spring, or did I have to get it done in the fall? Now I got to wait another year before I can start with this.
Okay, well that goes back to what type of strip till machine are you going to use? So there are coulter machines and then there are shank machines, and the reason why I like the shanks is we can get the fertilizer that much deeper. We can be down at 8 to 10 inches deep with that fertilizer, and I think that's awesome. We don't want our fertilizer in those top 3-4 inches because in a year like last year, for example, when we were really dry, we had moisture down deep in the ground. It sure helps our yield a lot more if we have plant food down deep in the ground as well. So with that shank machine, it's just a little bit different deal than the coulter machine. With coulters, I can run out there in the spring, I'm not too worried about it, but by the time that ground is fit all the way down to 8 or 10 inches deep, I should have been planting in our farm probably a week, 2 weeks ago. So I don't want to plant later. I want to plant at the same time as normal, so that's why strip till with our machine isn't going to work too well in the spring.
Well, here's what guys look at though, is they say, well, okay, that sounds nice, but I don't know, on my farm, the wind really blows here. And, you know, the wind really blows everywhere. But they're worried that that residue that they chopped up in the fall, now it's going to blow back over that strip till berm because, after all, I mean, you are doing seed bed preparation with that strip till. You should be able to go right in there and plant. So how do I manage that residue, and can I do that in the spring?
Okay, so one of the most important things that we found on our operation, a lot of guys told us, okay, when you're going to no-till or strip till, you need to leave those stalks standing tall in the fall, if you're going out there in corn stalks, for example. And yes, you can do that, but the trouble with that is those corn stalks eventually fall over, and they fall over, unfortunately, a lot of times right before we're going to plant. So we'll go and we'll plant, and then we're hairpinning residue, and our stands were not as good. So that's what I didn't like about no-till and strip till prior to us getting a chopping corn head. With a chopping corn head, we've sized that residue, and I know a lot of guys talk about this residue blowing off. You know, we've used chopping corn heads for quite a few years, and I really haven't seen a whole lot of problem
All you
in our
have to do is
operation.
lift up just a little higher, leave those stalks that remain just a little bit taller. I mean, you don't want to cut them right down to the root base. If you're leaving them where, you know, you've got a foot out there of stalk, that's enough to catch. It slows down that wind, and it keeps most of that residue in between the roots.
Yeah, but anyway, so Darren's question was, if I've got this berm there in the fall, it's too far in advance of spring, and we're going to have residue coming over the top. Well, I don't care. If the residue is down to just these little pieces, it's no big deal. When we're coming along with a planter, we clean that off anyway, and we've got a nice stand.
Well, that's the important thing. A lot of guys will ask me, okay, I'm going to strip till now. I'm going to have this nice black strip. Does that mean I don't need any row cleaners on my planter? No. That's absolutely not what I'm talking about, especially if you're going to go into corn stalk residue. We like to have good row cleaners there that can just push that out of the way, and then make sure when you're setting that up, you're going to push out far enough to get away from the gauge wheels. Otherwise, you're going to bounce over those little pieces of stalk, and now you've got an uneven planting depth, and you'll certainly see that in emergence.
Yeah, so that leads me to one of the next questions we get is, do you go back over the same strip every year when you're doing strip till year after year after year? Well, we're in 30-inch rows, and we'll do corn and beans, or we'll do continuous corn, one or the other. And either way, we're going to plant here one year, we're going to go 15 inches over the next year, then we're going back to where we were in year one. So we are rotating, we are splitting those rows. It's pretty easy. And then I guess the other thing that makes it easy is we do have RTK GPS on our tractor that's pulling the strip till machine and the tractor that is pulling the planter.
Well, you know, you have to think about what your goals are for your farm. And one of my biggest goals is trying to increase my organic matter levels on my farm. And where am I doing that? I'm doing it by planting crops that have lots of roots, like corn, for example. It has 5 times the root mass of soybeans. But if you're going to till that up, you're negating a lot of that benefit that you could have. So if I'm moving over 15 inches with my strip, I'm going to leave those corn stalk roots alone and let them decay naturally. And in the meantime, now I just move over to the side a little bit, plant my beans, and everything works out great. So I really like that system.
Yeah, we did no-till for a long time, and that was a way to increase our organic matter, reduce erosion, things like that. The other thing it does is obviously conserve moisture in a year like last year, but the problem was we weren't getting our fertilizer deep enough. Then the other problem was the ground wasn't very warm in the spring. And certainly strip till is not going to be as warm as conventional till, but it's definitely warmer in that berm than no-till. A lot of times we're finding it's 7 to 10 degrees warmer in the spring in that berm than between the rows where we've got all that residue left.
Nutrient stratification is a big deal, and along with that comes, all right, I'm doing strip till now. How do I soil sample in that if I'm just fertilizing this band over here, or maybe you're moving back and forth? Where do I stick my probe in the ground? And it certainly varies depending on the operation, but it is something you have to consider. Do I vary my rate or vary my spot a little bit that I'm pulling that sample? I like to pull some samples in the zone and some off to the side. I'm going to pull half of them in and half just off to the side of that zone, and then I can kind of get an overall picture of where I'm at.
Okay, so Darren, one last thing here with this whole strip till deal. A lot of guys will say, talking about the fertilizer, can I use less fertilizer in strip till than conventional till? We've been doing something, I was just going to mention, we've been doing something in our farm for over 10 years now, long-term study. We've been taking strip till and putting on the rate that we felt we needed, and we've been going, honest to God, 50% higher with P and K in broadcast. Over 10 years now on some fields, and we have yet to gain yield on those broadcast fields. Eventually, it's got to come back. We're putting so much more fertilizer on those broadcast fields, but I'm just trying to say that at least in the short term, we know that using those bands, those narrow bands down deep, is a more efficient way to use fertilizer. Universities have said it for years. I now believe it because we've done it for so many years on our farm. Now, this is not to say that there aren't disadvantages to strip till. The biggest one I see is it just takes time to do in the fall. But there certainly are some good advantages to it, so that's one of the reasons why we use it on our farm.
Now, one last comment on the fertilizer. When you think about it, well, what rate of fertilizer should I use? I'm in year one of strip tillage. I say use the same rate you were planning on using in your broadcast. Just put it in the strip and then see for yourself. You're either going to get a lot more yield, and all of a sudden you see, man, I got another 10 bushel pop. This is a great thing. Or you say, you know, I had a little too much P or K, I was short in something else, and you can start tweaking your program. So I wouldn't necessarily go into it thinking I'm going to cut my rates a lot. I would think of it as, hey, I'm going to be a lot more efficient with my fertilizer applications, and I can shoot for higher yields.
Well, you know what, Darren, even if I'm going to get higher yields, I'm going to have more fertilizer out there, I'm going to go to strip till, no till, conventional till, I don't care. We're going to probably still have some of our weed of the week. It's one of the toughest ones you'll probably face on your farm, but we'll tell you how to stop it coming up later in the show.